This week, I want to discuss what I do, which is game development as a hobby. YouTube is full of those people who will tell you all about indie game development from the perspective of a professional, or at least an aspiring professional. But instead, I wanted to give you the hobbyist perspective. Now, before I begin, I want to preface this and say, I would love for a game of mine to do well enough to where I could do this full time. But I would only want that on 100% of my own terms. At the end of the day, I approach my games like an artist rather than as a business. So I don't always make the most marketable products, and I don't do things that people would consider business smart. Now that's out of the way, let's talk about game development. As a hobbyist, I do my best to dedicate at least 30 hours a week to my games. Monday through Wednesday, I do my best to get at least 4 hours of development time throughout the day. I used to get up an hour early just so I could work an hour on my game before my day job, but I've changed that routine a little over 2 years ago. Instead, I now do all of my development after work. I work at least an hour and a half prior to cooking dinner. Cooking dinner is my relaxation time. Anyone who knows me knows that I love cooking, and not to brag, but I'm a pretty good home chef. After dinner, I spend my time with my significant other. Then I do my best to get at least another 2.5 to 3 hours of game development time in before I go to bed. Thursdays are video days, so usually no game development goes on during that day. And if it does, it's probably only about an hour or so. However, any progress is progress to me, so I make sure I make the most of that time whenever the opportunity presents itself. Friday is the day when I try to dedicate as much time as possible to my significant other, so game development usually doesn't start until after 10 p.m. those days. I'm naturally a night owl, and even though I'm not as young as I used to be, I usually end up working sometime after 2 a.m. During the weekend, I dedicate at least 7 hours each day to game development. Even when I'm out and about, I'm usually still doing something game related. While I follow my spouse around stores, I'm writing to-do lists or ideas on my phone. If I'm working out a problem, I even sometimes write code out on my phone. That way I can remember my idea and then go back and implement it later. Now, I'm not saying you have to work as many hours as I do, but if you want to see progress on your projects, or if you're in your learning journey in regards to game development, the one thing that is important is routine and consistency. Random sporadic learning or random sporadic development every other week is not going to give you the progress that you would like to see, and eventually you might give up the hobby, which is not what I'd want to see for anyone who wants to enter in this hobby from the artistic perspective. So how do I pick my projects? Well, sometimes I find my projects, and other times they find me, meaning sometimes I run into circumstances where I need a specific tool to do something that doesn't yet exist, or I have a friend that needs something specific, and I built the tool that they require. For picking game projects, I don't do any market research, because if I wanted to do that, I would be doing game development as a business rather than as a hobby. I refuse to do such things because I want to make the games that I want to play first. I do take in feedback about my gameplay and balance, but the core of my game is my vision, and that vision is unwavering. Now, many people online would tell you that this is a dumb approach, and from a business perspective, I 100% agree with them. However, as a hobbyist, money shouldn't be your primary goal. Making a good game, learning, and enjoying the experience should be your motivating factors. I'll give a caveat for those who are still doing this as a hobby and want to learn more about actually making a commercial project that appeals to the masses. But for anyone else doing it for fun and for artistry, I would tell you that the best thing that you can do for yourself is to make the game that you want. Set goals for yourself and define success on your own terms, and not the terms of others. Now, the one thing I would recommend is that you work with others on projects, whether that's you working with an artist, writer, developer, designer, or even if it's just you finding a group of people to constantly play test your game. Any sort of assistance will help. Also, getting a number of people awaiting your progress will keep you progressing. I recommend this for a few reasons. First is that it's hard to make a game on your own. Even a small shoot 'em up requires art, programming, design, sound, and music, all being very different skill sets. Now, you could be like me and be just a bit above mediocre for all of those skills, or you can choose to work with others. Another good reason to work with others is motivation. The drive that you have to complete something will only last so long, unless you have an unnatural compulsion to finish it. Now, I do fall into that latter camp, and I have a weird drive to finish basically everything that I start, in one way or another. Things that I'm unable to finish for one reason or another bother me, and that annoyance lives with me constantly. I don't recommend you to be like me, if you can prevent it at all. If possible, I suggest your motivation come from your joy of working on the project. your obligation to others, and your desire to see the project completed. For marketing, I would say things vary. If your goal is to learn about commercial projects, go about it the recommended way that people suggest online. They are a lot more knowledgeable than I could ever be. If you want to release something on your own terms, don't let anyone stop you. Whether if it's releasing a game for free or exclusively on a niche platform with only 200 players. It's 100% in your hands, and don't let anyone stop you. Post online as often as you'd like, or as little. Your game is yours, and you know the community that you want to cultivate. For example, I have dreams of making my own handheld game on my own self-created handheld device, sort of like those old Tiger Electronic or Game & Watch devices from my youth. I know that it's not commercially viable, but I would love to one day have 50 or 100 people with some weird niche device that I personally developed, all playing a game that I made and sharing an experience together in a way that can't be duplicated anywhere else. Most importantly, I always try to find something new to learn about technology, game design, and game development. I'm always looking for something that I don't know, whether if it's a new programming concept, a design technique, or a drawing technique, or whatever else. I'm always trying to do something new. I also intentionally pick projects and features that require me to learn something new. For example, hand cannon required me to create a level editor and connect to a server to upload and download levels. Coming into this project, I knew nothing about this process, and even now, I definitely wouldn't call myself an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm far more comfortable spinning up a new server and SQL database from scratch and linking it all together with my game. Being able to constantly learn new things is something great about this hobby. There's always a new horizon to chase, whether if it's cutting-edge technology or learning how to develop on vintage hardware. So in summary, I make games that I want to play and make. I do my best to keep a consistent schedule during development. I release and promote my games the way that I want and use the avenues of distribution that I believe best fit my projects. I do charge money for some of my games, but most of the things that I've made, I've released for free, and I'll continue that trend for a lot of my smaller and more experimental projects. I've said this in a previous video, but being a hobbyist game developer is all about enjoying the process. If you aren't enjoying creating a game, you're likely not approaching game development the right way. Or maybe the discipline as a whole isn't for you. Just like how I don't care for hiking and camping, despite having a major love for birds and nature. I know many people out there in the world who love to play video games would find the actual act of game development boring and would hate the process. Which is perfectly fine. Game development, and especially solo game development, isn't for most people. It's a highly technical hobby that requires hundreds if not thousands of hours of isolation to make something good. Even if you're working with a team, the actual learning process mostly happens alone. Though if you're like me and that sounds like fun, give it a shot. Outside of that, I encourage everyone, whether or not you want to learn game development, to at least learn the basics of programming. I am a firm believer that opening up new ways to apply logic and reason is great for the human mind. So I'll always advocate for everyone to learn the skill. Anyways, that's it for today. Thanks for watching, and thanks for your time.